Howdy, partners. Welcome to episode 16 of the show where we usually stay away from LA and discuss the rest of the West. We're bringing in LA today, though. We're bringing in Ohm Youngmisuk.
What
Our
up,
Clippers.
Tim?
How you
Look,
doing,
I
Ohm?
mean, I know you have a little bias against LA, you try to stay away from the glitz and glam, but you can only stay away from LA so long. We know that you like to live it up when you're in LA.
Listen, you got those Miami. You look like you're Miami Vice, Miami Heat, Miami something today, all hot pink. No, I stay away from LA because that's your turf. You and Dave
Yes.
McMenamin. You got That's OD, which highly recommend you check that out on YouTube each week.
Thank
So
you.
I've got the rest of the West. I'm not trying to start any kind of turf wars, but I wanted to bring you in because they are announcing all-star starters this week. I think we're over halfway through the season. I think we can go ahead and pick the all-star team in the Western Conference, or at least give our takes. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to let you tell me who you think the starter should be. We can discuss if we disagree. I have done something here, though. I've done a stat head search for each guy that I've put on the Western Conference roster just to show exactly how bonkers of a season all these guys are putting together. And you can talk about inflated numbers or whatever, but when you hear some of the history being made, it's pretty significant. So, let's start in the Western Conference backcourt. Who is your first starting guard?
Okay, my first starting guard is the guy right in your backyard, Luka Doncic. I mean, no brainer. To me, there were two really. I started my 5-starter ballot for the NBA. I got a vote this year with the two guys that were just no brainers to me. I will get to the other one later. I think you can guess who it is. But Doncic was my first one. Doncic and the other guy, but we're starting with backcourt. Doncic was an automatic no brainer. I mean, he's in the MVP discussion. He's been unbelievable this season. I mean, there's just nothing you can argue for him not to be in there. I don't care as good as Steph Curry's been, as good as John Morant's been, as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been. Luka Doncic is above them. So I got Luka Doncic there.
I mean, look, he's a three-time first-team All-NBA selection. He's having the best season of his career, leading the league in scoring at almost 34 a game, 8.9 rebounds, 8.7 assists. Nobody has ever put up those numbers in the history of the game. My stat head search, I dropped it down to 30 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Listen to this company. 88, 89, Michael Jordan, Russ during his MVP season, and Oscar Robertson 4 times. So again, that's dropping the scoring down over 3.5 points, and the rebounds and assists a little bit. He's putting up
Tim, what year did
numbers.
you have Michael again? That was 87, 88?
No, that was 88, 89.
88, 89. Okay, so I have a funny story for you. As you know, I am close to the Dallas Mavericks coaching staff. And they know that I'm just an absolute silly dude who just won't throw away anything. And if we were in my home office, okay, I would show you this. But you're old enough to remember that back in the day, they used to make these T-shirts called 6-packs for each team. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And it was these little cartoon bobbleheads. And it would come in like a 6-pack, like a beer 6-pack, or like, a Coke bottle 6-pack. And every team, Boston Celtics, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Parrish, all those guys. Lakers was obviously there. There would even be like a little 6-man and the head coach. The Chicago Bulls one was 6 Michael Jordans, okay? Nobody else, right? And I showed the Dallas Mavericks staff and I said, this reminds me that if there were maybe a Doncic one this year, a 6-pack would be all Doncic's.
Well, listen, Luka and 6-packs go hand in hand. I can assure you of that. Recovery beers and all other things.
But it really does feel like what Doncic is doing is very early Michael Jordan before Scottie and Horace Grant developed.
Yeah,
that's
before
what it feels like.
It was Michael and the Jordan heirs, and it's Luka and the Doncic heirs. Right now, essentially. Your second guard in the West Conference starting lineup.
MacMahon, when I tell you I agonized over this one, I agonized over this one.
This is a tough one.
This was a really tough one. I probably would have had Steph Curry in there had Steph remained healthy. So to me, it came down to two guys, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and John Morant. I like to reward guys who have an unbelievable individual season. To me, that means that they're the reason why an all-star. But I also factor in how the team is doing.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to leave Ja Morant off because of how good Memphis has been. But Ja also hasn't been playing every game. And this late surge by Oklahoma City, as good as Shea has been good all season. But the team is starting to play better. And I was just like, how can I leave a 30-point scorer off the starting all-star lineup? So I put Shea Gilgeous-Alexander as the other starting backcourt mate, and that was tough.
Yeah, and I think it will end up being Steph Curry. He's obviously winning the fan vote. I think the other things will be, the coaches and the players. It's the media and the players rather. I think that will be close enough where Steph's going to get the nod. I did not get an official media vote. They only use me as a pool reporter apparently these days and steal the Cojones Factor Play of the Year and slap Jerry West's name on it. But I didn't get a media vote. Oh, you saw that. If I did, though, I would have gone SGA. 30.7 points, 4.8 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.1 blocks per game. You plug all those into a stat head search, one guy, one time pops up. We're right back to Michael Jordan. 87-88 Michael Jordan is the only one. If you bump the blocks down to 1.0, you get 90-91 Michael Jordan. When it's just you and Michael Jordan, that is a pretty strong case for an all-star selection, and they're neck and neck with the Warriors in the standings right now. So, look, Ja's got a strong case. Steph has a strong case. I also would have gone SGA in the starting lineup if I had a ballot, although I anticipate he'll be a reserve and Steph will be a starter.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong there. It's crazy that we keep mentioning all these guys. Every night when we take a look at the ESPN stats and info, the line that they put up, it's like literally compared to all-time greats. And it always
That's going to be a theme
wonder,
here. That's going to be a theme.
It always makes me wonder what it would be like if those all-time greats were playing in today's game with this, basically all offense all the time type of flow of the game. I mean, I think Michael Jordan would just be incredibly nasty if he were playing today.
He probably would put some points up. He probably would put some points up. All right, let's go to your front court starters. Your first one.
Yeah, I'll start with Domantas Sabonis. This was where I looked at.
That's your first guy?
Well, I'm not going in order.
Okay,
I guess I'm going.
All right,
maybe,
so go Sabonis. I had him as well.
I would say, I guess I'm going from low to high with the front court. So Sabonis, I had to reward him. I think not only has he been on a tear and unbelievable with all the double doubles and even like almost approaching triple doubles on a nightly basis, but the way Sacramento has been playing, I felt like you can't have, you cannot go without a King starter in there. So I wanted to put Sabonis there in the front court. He's just been incredible. And you know what? The front court in the Western Conference, to me, was not as tough as it was in the Eastern Conference. Picking the front court East was very difficult.
I agree with that. So Sabonis, 18.8 points, 12.6 rebounds, 7.3 assists for a team that is third place in the Western Conference. They're lighting the beam. I mean, Vivek's electric bill has skyrocketed this season, but so is attendance, so has their winning percentage, so has interest there. I was among many who ripped the trade. Hey, it is working out for both sides. Certainly Halliburton deserves to be an all-star in the East. But you plug in points, rebounds, assists, 18, 12, and 7 to even round down significantly. 61-62 Oscar Robertson. 66-67 Wilt. 67-68 Wilt, and 21-22 Nikola Jokic. That is the list. Wilt is Sabonis is shooting 61.1% from the floor. Wilt in 66-67 is the only one with a higher field goal percentage, and Sabonis' true shooting percentage, which is 67 and change, is better than any of them. So again, this guy, not just is he helping the Kings win, but he is putting together like 12 points. He's leading the league in rebounds, and he's one of the best facilitators, as well as scoring almost 19 a game. Absolutely deserving of being an all-star.
Yeah, and you know what? give it to your friend Bontemps the next time you talk to him, because Bontemps and I think we had to regrade the Kings and Pacers trade on NBA Cross Court, which you can find on ESPN Plus. And I believe Bontemps was basically just poo-pooing Domantas Sabonis. Okay.
Oh, no,
Bontemps. This is before.
No. And we're going to get to another
started.
guy. We're going to get to another guy, another European who deserves to be on the All-Star team in the Western Conference that Bontemps had killed until he made him look like a buffoon, which isn't hard to do, but we'll get to him later. Okay. Another All-Star starter on your ballot for the Western Conference front court.
Yeah, right here at home in Los Angeles. He's going to play in a few hours when the Clippers and Lakers play. LeBron James, he's been unbelievable. I just saw our guy Dave McMenamin upstairs, and I was just saying how LeBron's on the tear. Dave's always on the tear, okay? But how LeBron is on the tear.
We refer to him as Mac 11 seed on this show.
Mac 11 seed. Yeah, and I would say that, basically LeBron has exceeded my expectations. I mean, last year, obviously he was great, but the team wasn't doing very well. And I think that took away some of the shine from how he did last season. And this season, it's just like he's come back even stronger. And the numbers he keeps putting up as he chases Kareem. And we're now looking at him closing in on Kareem probably a lot faster than any of us thought. I mean, I think at the beginning of the season, a lot of us were asking the ESPN staff to predict the game that LeBron would break the record, Kareem's record. And I picked, I think it was February 9th against Milwaukee at home. I just thought it would be appropriate. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, his former team. LeBron has a sense for those things, those type of moments in history. But I don't know. He might get there a lot quicker than we think just because he's on such a tear.
Yeah, and I mean, forget about comparing his numbers to other guys who have been 38 years old. Certainly forget about comparing him to other guys who've been in their 20th year. I mean, what he's doing is absolutely unprecedented for a guy at his age, with his experience and all that kind of thing. 29.8 points, 8.5 rebounds, 6.9 assists. You plug that into the stat head search. Same guys I mentioned with Luka. Same exact guys pop up. So what you're getting is Luka this season, MVP season Russ, 88, 89 Michael Jordan, and Oscar Robertson 4 times. And what's crazy is LeBron's the only one in that bunch who's shooting better than 50% from the floor. And he'd be second in true shooting percentage behind only Luka this season. So you don't even have to say, 4 guys is like what he's doing is historically spectacular, period. If he's 28, 38, whatever. Yeah,
I mean, LeBron is amazing. Like I just, you can't take him for granted. I think and that's the thing about what the Lakers are doing, Tim, is like, I'm glad they made the Rui trade. I hope they're not done. Because you hate to see, no matter what sport it is, whether it's the NFL, whether it's NBA, you hate to see a team kind of not take advantage of having a superstar in that window, perhaps a championship window. And LeBron is still very much, even at his age, even after all the mileage, he's still kind of, that window still open for him. And so you want to see the Lakers take advantage of it. And so the Rui trade is definitely a good start for them. And so, we'll see how that goes. But LeBron definitely needs more help.
Hey, well, he's a hell of a player. He's a horrible GM. He's the, don't cry for him for having Russ on his team. He's the one who did that. But that's enough talk about LA for now. Your final front court starter, unless you are going to have a lobotomy or need one, I think we know where you're going here.
Wait a minute. Let me see here. You don't need to be Lloyd Christmas here and be Dumb and Dumber to figure out who my starting center would be. Nikola Jokic, a 2-time MVP, on his way to, I think, a 3-time MVP back-to-back. Okay, so I think Nikola Jokic and Doncic were the 2 guys that immediately started with my ballot. I immediately just scribbled in Jokic, and then I put in Doncic, and I filled in the rest. Jokic, as we said every night, when you look at his stat lines, there's only one guy they keep comparing him to, Wilt Chamberlain. It's like every single night.
I got a couple other names for you.
This is Wilt Chamberlain.
By the way, I did forget, LeBron is our cojones factor player of the week, had 18 clutch points, led the league by a significant margin last week in 13 minutes. The Lakers keep their heads above water without AD. But Nikola Jokic, as you mentioned, no-brainer. back-to-back MVP who's having the best season of his career. The Nuggets are sitting there in first place in the Western Conference. You know, he has help, don't get me wrong, but primarily because of his brilliance. 25.1 points, 11.0 rebounds, 9.9 assists, just a shade away from averaging a triple-double. You put 25, 11, and 9 in the stat head search. It's not Wilt Chamberlain who pops up. It's 61, 62, Oscar Robertson. I did a bonus. I did a bonus stat head search here because Joker is shooting 62.6% from the floor. So I was curious. 9 assists is a lot of assists per game. Certainly the most ever by a big man. So I was like, has anybody ever come close to shooting this high of a percentage from the floor with that many assists? The answer is no. The next highest field goal percentage for a guy who averaged more than 9 assists per game, 87-88, John Stockton at 57.4. So more than 5 percentage points lower. So we can talk about comparing to, you know, the Wilt comparisons, but in these searches, it's Oscar Robertson and John Stockton, 2 Hall of Fame point guards. that come up in statistical comparisons for the Joker.
It makes a lot of sense to him because he's the best passer, best passing big man we've ever seen, probably and likely the best passer in the game today. And I would say this, look, I think I sat down with you and Wendy and Bontemps before the season started at our ESPN summit, and we did a little Denver Nuggets season preview. And I said, there is a very strong possibility Nikola Jokic is going to be even better this season because he has Jamal Murray back and Michael Porter Jr. back, and he has a better supporting cast. And I made the argument that I think we're going to see him shoot even better. And, you know, and what are you going to do? If you double him and you take the ball out of his hands, his assists are going to go up. If you don't, and with all those other weapons, he's going to score even better. So there's like basically no answer for Jokic. And now with the Denver Nuggets, number 1 in the West, if they continue to keep this up, how can you make the argument that he is not the MVP?
Yeah, and they've also put a really nice group around him. Aaron Gordon does not get a spot in my reserves, but he's definitely in the honorable mentions. A guy who the numbers aren't you know, they don't pop like the rest of these guys' numbers, but I would say he's been the second best player on the number 1 seed in the West this year. And he fits so well with Joker. He can guard, you know, pretty much any position. He's a cutter. He's a finisher. He can pass it. He can shoot just well enough. KCP, you know, 3-and-D guy who also cuts. Bruce Brown's been a nice fit. The chemistry with Jamal Murray. I think we need to keep an eye on the Nuggets though before the trade deadline. I hear they're searching for a bigger wing defender. And might be dangling Bones Highland. So just something to keep an eye on.
Wait a minute. Bones. So if I know we haven't gotten to reserves yet, Tim, but I mean, if the Denver Nuggets are the best team in the West, you don't have 2 Nuggets on your All-Star team?
It's tough. And we're going to
I mean, history says a team that goes that far and is doing that well usually has 2 All-Stars.
And so that I struggled with that. I struggled with not having Aaron Gordon on the team. And I don't have 2 Grizzlies on the team either. I don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. or Desmond Bane. And both of those guys have also got included in the honorable mentions. You know, Jaren Jackson Jr., arguably your front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. He's only averaging 26 minutes per game. He missed, you know, that stretch to start the season. I just struggled there. But let's start with I'll throw out my reserves and you can argue, and we'll start in the front court. I think the backcourt's pretty obvious. We'll get to those guys and then we'll get to the wild cards. But starting in the front court, the other European who was recently traded and has been ripped unfairly by Tim the Bozo Bontemps, Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen, this dude is putting up 24.8 points. 8.7 rebounds per game. So his shooting percentages are basically 52, 43, 87. 66.6 true shooting percentage. So I plug in 24 and 8 with a shooting percentage of 66.6%. And one name popped up. only one name, and that is Nikola Jokic this season. Just to put that in perspective. So then I bumped it to 24-8 and 50% from the floor, 40% from 3-point range, a minimum of 1 3 per game. Karl Anthony Towns 3 times, Larry Bird twice, in 2012, 13 LeBron James. So, and look, we all, I think, came into the season thinking, hey, total rebuild for the Jazz, Tankapalooza, where are they going to land in the Victor Derby? You know, they're right in the thick of things as far as, you know, not just play in. Could they snag the 6th seed? Now we'll see what happens before the trade deadline. But one thing I guarantee you ain't happening is Larry Markkinen is not moving. He's going to be a major part of the Jazz's future for the foreseeable future.
Tim, I would say I actually gave him very strong consideration for a starting spot. It was between him and Sabonis for my last spot on the 5. So I ended up picking Sabonis just because of what Sacramento's done this season and how they are just surging. And then I said, okay, Markkinen is like literally it was, you know, if Sabonis was my 5th guy and he's 5A, Markkinen was 5B.
All right. And I do try to stay away from LA. And this was a difficult decision. As you said, I think the backcourt in the West is just absolutely loaded. I don't think the front court is as loaded. And Anthony Davis has only played 25 games. Now, they're expecting him back soon. You know, he's going to have more games under his belt, knock on wood, that he's able to stay healthy before the All-Star break. And the Lakers, you know, they're not in the play-in scenario even right now. But the numbers he's put up, 27.4 points, 12.1 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 2.1 blocks, 1.3 steals, shooting better than 59% from the floor. You know, my stat head search, 27, 12, 2, 2, and 1, nobody. Just him this year. Drop it to 26 and 11 with the 2 assists, 2 blocks, and the steal. Hakeem twice. This is the 3rd time Anthony Davis has done it. Also 16, 17, and 17, 18 with the Pelicans. And you'll like this one. 90, 91 Patrick Ewing. Those are the only guys who have done that. And AD this season, again, it's a small sample size. He has missed a lot of games. But this season, of that group, it's the best field goal percentage by 6 points, beating the 24-year-old version of himself. The numbers are just...
Of all the guys you just mentioned, MacMahon, just out of curiosity, was David Robinson on that list?
So David Robinson was not on the list. If you put the rebounds to 10, Robinson was on, and then there was a lot more guys. It wasn't a long list, but Akeem was on there several times. Robinson was on there. I don't remember. He popped up there a few times. It was jacking the rebounds up to 11 that really cut the list. And then again, jacking the rebounds up to 12, where AD is right now, cut everybody else out.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked this was recently I just took a lot of heat online because Shaq had posted the all-time great #1 overall draft picks. This is for another time, but he had, you know, all of the greats on their #1 overall picks. Who was the best one? David Robinson was on there, but there was no Patrick Ewing. So
that's
I commented in the comments.
Shaq has like been okay.
I know. I commented. I said Patrick Ewing greater sign than David Robinson, and everybody in the world came after me. And I get it. David Robinson, former MVP, 2-time champion, but David Robinson did not win until Tim Duncan got there. Okay. And so Patrick Ewing had his team 2nd round or better every year, would run into Michael Jordan. That's a whole nother. So that's why when you mentioned that stat, I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
again, I just wanted to put that out there for everybody that comes at me.
That's a separate debate and an interesting debate. Robinson was very, very close to that statistical cutoff, but the rebounds got him. And then my last.
But let me ask. I want to say this. I want to say this about AD though, because it's you know, Dave today said on his comeback is imminent. I feel like once AD comes back, and if he comes back, let's say this Saturday,
right?
I think they play the Celtics on ABC. If he does do that, it's almost like he will cement this. You know what I mean? That it won't be a question. I think if he did not come back past All-Star, well, you could make the argument for somebody else. But I think once he comes back, it will cement it.
Yeah, and again, the production is just so convincing that I struggle with the lack of games played, and certainly like I will use games played as a tiebreaker, but I didn't feel like there was anything close to a tie in this scenario. And the same thing applies to this guy I'm going with here, Zion Williamson. 26 points, 7 rebounds, 4.6 assists for a team that is fourth in the West, and he's shooting 60.8% from the floor. Stat head search 26, 7, and 4 at 60%. It's just him. Just him. You drop that to 55%. Obviously, it was a steep drop. 55%. You got Giannis 4 times, Kareem twice, Jokic twice. 69-70 Wilt, 90-91 Barkley, 96-97 Karl Malone, and 12-13 LeBron James again. So that's pretty strong company to be in. And I had to drop the percentages to get those guys in. Joker last season at 58.3% had the next highest field goal percentage in this group. Zion, Barkley's the guy who I think is the closest comp in terms of style of play, but Zion's like, he's point guardish at 6'6", 285 and explosive as can be. I mean, you can say, well, he doesn't have a jump shot. He doesn't need a jump shot. You can't keep him out of the paint, and once he gets in there, you can't stop him from finishing.
What is your cutoff for All-Star at how many games need to be played?
I don't have a straight up cutoff. AD's at 25 games right now, and that's barely over half. And I'll be honest, that was a real struggle for me. That was a real struggle.
It's got to be at least half, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And both of those.
What's Zion at? How many games Zion's played?
Zion's at 29, and, we don't know exactly when he's coming back. Obviously, any guy that's a hamstring, it's and a significant hamstring strain is concerning, especially a guy who is as big and fast. I mean, there's nobody as big and fast twitch as him, right? Like he's a one of a kind type of physical specimen. So the games played, that's a struggle, and that's where we can get into the conversation. I'll tell you right now, both my wild cards are guards because I do think the backcourt's much more loaded. My honorable mentions, front court guys, Paul George. He's not too much ahead of those guys in terms of games played. And again, I thought production was just, different levels. I mentioned Aaron Gordon. I mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr. Jackson's also in the games played. Plus, he's a mid-20s per minute guy. Kawhi, same type of thing. Plus, every time I see him against the Mavericks, he's as dominant as ever, but he hasn't been this season. And then Jeremy Grant.
If Kawhi continues the tear that he's on, and that's very hard, but Kawhi has scored 30 or more in 4 of his last 6 games, I believe. He's starting to show, when Kawhi looks great, yet, but...
and when the Clippers look great, when they play Texas teams, they are unbeatable against Texas and can't beat anybody else in the league.
Well, unless Luka goes off like he normally does.
Hadn't happened the last, in January, they're 4-0 against Texas and 0-7 against everybody else.
Yeah. But Kawhi is definitely building, and I wonder, I think it'll probably be too late because he hasn't played a lot of games, and people will think, oh, Kawhi's been missing a lot of games, but really lately he's been playing a lot of games. And it's playing a lot of minutes. And I think that's when the Clippers were struggling, that's been the one positive, that he continues to build and build and build. And I think he's reminding people, hey, don't forget about me, just how good I am.
Well, if you're picking hey, the playoffs are starting, who are the 12 players in the West you'd most want to have on your team? Kawhi's still very early in that conversation. But when you're picking the all-star team, to me, that has to be based on what has happened this season. And through injury and, their decisions, he hadn't played a whole lot. And again, he was not that he was bad. He wasn't dominant for much of this season.
So before I forget, you've snubbed Jaren Jackson Jr., potentially defensive player of the year, Aaron Gordon, who
Mm-hmm.
probably are right now. I mean, Jamal Murray is still building his way up, so make the argument that he's the second best player in the Nuggets right now, or at least most consistent behind Jokic. And then you've snubbed
Both
Jeremy
the
Grant.
Clippers.
Yeah, both Clippers. That's a lot. So let's get to the rest of who else you have on there.
Right. And so the only team that I have with multiple players on the All-Star team isn't even in the play-in, and that's the Lakers. I didn't get two Nuggets. I didn't get two Grizzlies. Again, there's honorable
You didn't get
mentions
two
there.
Kings.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I stand corrected. I forgot about those beam laters. We'll get to our second king. You're right. So the guards, look, you mentioned how difficult the decision was for the second starting spot in the West. John Morant and Steph Curry are absolutely going to be all-stars. I think Steph will end up starting, but there's four just cannot leave them off guards in the Western Conference. Luka and SGA we had as starters. John, Steph are both going to be on there. John Morant, 27.2 points, 5.5 rebounds, 7.9 assists. That stat head search. Oscar Robertson 8 times. He's pretty good. Luka Doncic already 4 times, including this season. LeBron 3 times. Russell Westbrook twice. Michael Jordan once. James Harden once. Pretty elite company. They're second in the West. You know, this is a guy who's been all NBA, who earned a Supermax rookie contract extension. He's having his best season. Steph is still Steph, right? I mean, 29.2 points, 6.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists. Shooting splits are basically 49, 42, 92, rounding up a little bit on each of those. You go 29, 6, and 6 with 40% from three-point range. There's a name that pops up in that stat head search. One, singular, Larry Bird in 87, 88. So again, like every one of these guys we're talking about, and yes, it's kind of like the Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa era of baseball. Numbers are blown up around the league. But I think this is part of it is just because of skill, the skill of these guys. The game's changed, the pace, the space, all those kind of things. But we're just night after night, team after team, we're seeing like historical brilliance. And like I said, that's reflected in just how rare these stats are. So I know you agree on both those guys. You want to anything there you want to add in?
I mean, it's insane that like Michael Malone, who will probably be the West All-Star coach, although I asked him the other day because he was talking about the All-Star game, and he was basically like most coaches, like, the All-Star game is a terrible game played. And I said, well, you might have some control over that because you're going to be the coach. And he goes, if I have my way, I think he said he was going to be in, Las Vegas, because he said his daughters had some sort of like volleyball tournament. And I was like, yeah, coach, I don't think you're going to be there. I think you will be in Salt Lake City.
Yeah,
I
think
no,
those
two. Can you imagine, Tim? Can you imagine bringing Steph Curry? And I think I agree with you. I think Steph might end up starting because of the fan, but Steph Curry and John Morant off the bench.
So the West is low. Well, also he won't have the West team, right? They'll be split up. Up because of the stupid. Well, the draft. I want to say. I like the draft. I like the whole thing of who's going to be the last pick, honestly, as much as anything. But the East is loaded in the front court, the West is loaded in the backcourt, and all right. So, like I said, both of my wild cards went to guards, and I said I only had California teams with 2 spots. I should have said, because I do have the beam lighters with 2 All-Stars. They are third in the West. Their 2 best players have stayed healthy and have been durable and consistent all season long. And De'Aaron Fox is having a hell of a season. 24.2 points, 4.3 rebounds, 6.0 assists, shooting better than 50% from the floor. You plug in 24, 4, and 6, 50% from the floor. This one's a trip. LeBron James, how many times do you think LeBron's done that?
Shoot, I don't know. 5 times?
12.
Oh God.
which is more than or as much as everybody else put together. 12 times. Larry Bird did it 3 times. Michael Jordan did it 3 times. Jokic 3 times, including this season. And then 2021 Kyrie, 21-22 Durant. Both those guys missed a lot of games in those seasons. And then 15-16 Steph Curry. So again, I mean, like, he's playing for the 3rd best team in the West. He's putting up numbers that when you punch those in, you're talking about all-time greats. Like Kyrie is by far the worst player on that list. And, you know, the dude's had a Hall of Fame caliber career. And then, you know, the other thing about De'Aaron Fox, he's 1 point shy of leading the league in clutch points. DeMar DeRozan leads, but Fox has played fewer clutch minutes by a lot, and he's shooting like 60% in clutch situations. And he just dominates fourth quarters on a consistent basis for a team that just keeps on closing out opponents. And like the reason they're 3rd in the West is in large part because he's dominant as a closer, and he is the front runner for the Cojones Factor Jerry West ripoff trophy.
Listen, man, don't be bringing my dude Jerry West's name down a little bit. You know, don't slander his name. Okay.
Listen, I don't think Jerry West was listening to the podcast, but yeah, I blame the NBA league office that just wants to use me as a pool reporter and won't even give me a freaking vote in anything.
I will say this about De'Aaron Fox. All of those things, I agree with you. What you said, they are beating big time teams. They're closing games out, and not only is he the catalyst that drives it all. Defensively, I don't think you have to almost watch it every night.
Yeah.
Defensively, he's making big plays too. That team's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, they are.
They remind me of that young Nets team that I covered in the early 2000s that went to 2 NBA finals in a row. A team that just
I thought you were going to talk about with
exciting.
like Dr. J and the ABA as old as you are.
Yeah, no, I'm not that old. I'm not that old. But the Jason Kidd Nets, those were a lot of fun to watch. Kenya Martin, RJ every night just kind of running the floor. This team is high octane. They're exciting to watch, and I think they deserve 2 All-Stars.
And by the way, if we're talking about Coach of the Year at the midway point of the season, Mike Brown has to be at or near the top of that. I mean, I'll say this. He would get my vote right now. I did not think this was a playoff team. I thought maybe they could sneak around and fart their way into a play-in participation ribbon, which I think they would have been the first banner hung in that arena. But they've blown that out of the water, and they are comfortably sitting in the 3rd spot in the West. So I think Mike Brown deserves a lot of credit for getting the most out of Fox and Sabonis and really figuring out ways to make that work. And then, as you said, their defense is just drastically better. My last wild card spot, I struggled with this because Portland is just been in a slide down the standings, and they're sitting there, tied with the Lakers, I believe, right now. 11th, 12th in the Western Conference. But listen, man, Dame's putting up 29 points, 4 rebounds, 7.3 assists. Again, you plug that into a stat head search. You got James Harden 5 times, LeBron twice, 1 Jordan, 1 Allen Iverson, a Dwayne Wade, MVP Russ, 1920 Trae Young, 1920 Damian Lillard, and then Luka this year. Like, I just felt like the drop off from what Dame's doing statistically to guys like Anthony Edwards, the Wolves have struggled as well. Desmond Bane, he's missed a lot of games. The numbers aren't quite at that level. Devin Booker obviously has been out for a while. Had he been healthy, I think he'd have been a pretty easy decision. But I gave Dame the edge over those 3 guys that I would call my honorable mentions.
Let me check with Pat Bev first to see what he thinks of your pick. Okay.
Listen, Pat Bev has his own podcast, and I've got a feeling that's going to be a full-time job for him, perhaps as soon as next season.
Listen, Dame is on fire as of late. I believe he has scored 40 or more in 3 of his last 7 games. And like he's also approaching and when he's not scoring 40, it's like 37. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like he is absolutely on fire as of late. It's hard to keep him off that team. There are so many deserving guys. I mean, it's amazing that we only have 1 Grizzly right now on the West All-Stars. When you think about it, 1 Nugget. So, but it's hard. It's hard to keep a guy like Dame off. I mean, he is a perennial all-star, and he's playing at an all-star level right now.
So, you have any major beefs here? Are there any that you're just going to absolutely light me on fire for? Because they're like, listen, I get Nuggets fans got a beef, Grizzlies fans got a beef. Clipper Darrell, I saw he's returned to crypto.com. He might have a beef with me for leaving those guys out. But again, every single guy.
I can understand why you left the Clippers off, because they've missed a lot of games. I would say
Clipper Darrell missed a lot of games too.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave Clipper Darrell alone. The guy's gone through enough. I would say if I had one weak spot to attack, it might be Zion. Not because of how he's played when healthy. When he's played when healthy, he's an all-star. But he's been out. And that, to me, has to factor in. Like, if we're thinking about all these guys we're leaving off who are playing and available every night, and Zion's not, and if Zion doesn't come back before the All-Star game, I mean, yes, I guess they'll still vote him as All-Star and they'll replace him anyways. But to me, I would say that would be my one argument of trying to slip in another Nugget or another Grizzly or somebody else. It's just that if Zion doesn't come back anytime soon, what's the availability factor here that we need to factor in? That's all.
Yeah, and again, I can make the same argument for AD. Certainly considered those. If I was going to leave one of those two off, it would have been AD. He's played fewer games, and I have to scroll down a hell of a lot further to find those Lakers in the standings. Like, my thumb starts hurting. I have to scroll so far. Golly. But I hear the argument. All right, Little Omi, you are the only LA resident who is approved for a Howdy Partners appearance. But you can catch Ohm and Mac11 Seed on That's OD. That's every week here on ESPN's NBA YouTube channel. Ohm, I appreciate you joining us and really brightening up my day with that Miami Vice sweatsuit of yours.
By the way, I got to give a shout out to Wifey MacMahon here. Is that a green background that I see?
This is a dark Everglade is the official color.
Dark Everglade. I like it a lot. I know you don't have that interior design taste. Okay, I know that is all wifey back there.
Not only do I not have the interior design taste, I don't have the interior design privileges, as I'm sure you have assumed. So, I appreciate you pointing that out for everybody. Appreciate you joining me, and adios, amigos.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.